right?
Okay, that's enough of that. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Effing Growth. I'm Rymar. This is Joe Krug, and today we're talking all about what it takes to build a remote work environment, and more specifically, a fully asynchronous work environment. And we'll explain all about what that means. But before we get too far into this thing, let's effing grow. Okay, what's up, Joe?
Hey, Rymar. How's it going?
It is going.
Great.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this because we were talking pre-show. I was hanging with my girlfriend's parents this weekend, and they come from a different generation, and we were trying to explain that we were all remote. And, you know, that was just interesting to hear them try to kind of conceptualize what it means to not be in the same room working, you know, with people. And so we're going to talk all about that, but like we always have. Oh, do we have some announcements today? We do. We have some quick announcements. Let's see. Well, really just a reminder to vote for your favorite topic and subscribe and like this video if you get value out of that. We do appreciate you telling YouTube that we're doing a good job. Help other people discover these videos. And maybe to mention Clone Comp again. For those of you who missed it last week, we did an overview of the Clone Comp event. It is the largest Webflow hackathon on the planet. This year we expect hundreds of participants. Last year we had 186 registered participants, 106 total submissions. The energy and the connections around the event was super cool. And this year it's going to get even one level further because we've got new tools, thanks to gather.town, and we've got more experience and just connections in the community and the momentum around some of the events that we've had. And so we're really excited about that. That's going to be July 20th through 23rd. For anybody who's watching, check out clonecomp.webflow.io for that. We'll share that in the comments here. Maybe somebody can grab that, or I'll share that as we go into the disclaimer. So any other announcements, any thoughts, Joe, before we move right into the show here?
Yeah, that next week we're talking about how to build a memorable portfolio. That's going to be a good one. And either the next week or the week after, we're going to have a special episode that we're going to start preparing for today. So growth is all about what you want. And every few months, we're going to have a special episode. One of those is coming in a few weeks. We'll give more information about that probably at the end of the show, and definitely more information by next week. So I'm excited for that.
And it's in the list. It's in the list there for anybody who's interested. It's it's on the list on the Growth Show episodes. The voting's kind of locked in on that. So even if the voting for that topic supersedes the next one, we are going to do the portfolio topic next week. But we'll dive into that following topic at the end of the show, talk about how you can share some thoughts here. And that's going to be, we think, a pretty interesting episode in a couple weeks. So let's get into today's episode, which, again, is all about remote work. As always, we start the episodes with a disclaimer, just a little bit of clarity about where we're coming from in this episode. A lot of the topics we take on are so broad that, you know, you could do multiple episodes on some of these. And so we kind of look through a very specific lens, and that's kind of what we use a disclaimer to set up. So what's our disclaimer this week, Joe?
Disclaimer, we're not talking about the legal side of business and the legal side of remote work. We're not talking freelancer versus employee. We're not talking about legal setup. We're not talking about state-specific laws or country-specific laws. This episode is all about fostering a powerful remote work environment. It's about people. It's about how people work online. And if you ask a question about legal, we will not be answering it. So that's the disclaimer for this week.
Yeah. And also, we're going to talk about things, again, from our perspective, right? There's lots of ways to do things. And so if you have a thought about how remote work should work, or if you disagree with something we have to say, or you think there's a different way to do it, we'd love to hear it in the comments. We've got people popping off here. What's up, Nick from Austin? Let's see, Victor Crew, hello. Walker Reed, what's up? Maggie's in the house. Daniel, Nicholas, Christian, Grace, got a lot of the typical faces. So welcome, everyone. If you're new to the show, you know, subscribe, join, let's get into it. A whole new way to work, which has really been accelerated by the pandemic. This last year has really accelerated this idea of remote work, and tools, technology over the last few years have really amplified our ability to work remotely and to do things kind of outside of a centralized setting. And so that's what we're all about. A lot of us are knowledge workers. We're making our income off of this, inside of screens, right? We're basically working inside of a device. And so how does that change as we go? We're going to ask Joe a little bit about, how he built Finsweet as a remote work culture. So Finsweet's always been remote first. And so some of the stuff we'll talk about are what are the differences between companies that are remote first from the get-go versus companies that are trying to make the shift into remote work, and what kind of hurdles they might face. We're going to talk a little bit about the 4 different types of remote work. There's 5. The 5 levels, of remote work. So maybe we should get into some of those right now. Do you want to take a run at those, Joe?
Let me first cover some of the context of how Finsweet started and how we started remote first. Finsweet started about 5.5 years ago, and ever since the beginning, I always thought remote. I always thought that the physical business and the physical face-to-face just wasn't needed in this industry. So even pre-pandemic, Finsweet was a remote company, and we have been fostering this type of remote environment since the beginning. And I was 100% sure that Finsweet would be remote when I was living near New York City, and the New York City clients asked me to come into the office. And it felt like a huge waste of time. I commuted. I went to their office. We talked for an hour, and I left. And this was a lot of time. It was expensive. I had to start working this into the cost of what I was billing them. And this whole thing could have just been done video chat. And when that started happening a few times, I said, got to get out of New York. I have to really start thinking remote, because we're in an industry that is so prime for remote work. So we're going to be talking a lot about that this conversation is really specific to our industry. There are some professions and industries that really need to be face-to-face, but this one that we're in, you don't have to be face-to-face.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
Yeah, and that's a good point to make. Some industries can't be remote by default, right? It's hard to do certain things that need to take place in the physical world in a distributed way. That's not us, right? So again, the lens we're looking at this through is knowledge workers, people who earn their income online, right? We're all digital, we're designers, we're web developers, we're software builders, whatever it may be. And Jay was asking right here, do you think this remote culture will continue after the pandemic totally goes away? I think so. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Mostly it's because of the flexibility. One of the biggest things we're going to talk about is employee happiness, the flexibility to kind of work wherever you want, and having an entrepreneurial mindset from the people in your organization where they hold themselves accountable to the standard of delivering the work, right? The idea of putting everybody inside of a room or a box where you can watch them all work is that, you have to be there supervising them because maybe they're not going to, be productive or whatever it is, right? And it goes all the way back to probably like assembly line manufacturing stuff where it was just like work had to be a physical thing, right? And so as that became and as that evolved into things that were more mental and distributed, we didn't really have models for how to do this, and you still needed to be at an office to kind of work, right? And so work has always evolved from a physical thing now into the 20th century, 21st century, into a knowledge-based thing. And I think we need to start building workspaces just a little bit different. And so it'll be interesting to see what you all think in the audience about some of this stuff, and diving into, I guess, what it is that we think makes it so special. So let's dive into those 5 levels of remote, because I want to give people kind of an overview. And this comes from Matt Mullenweg, if y'all are not familiar, which comes from WordPress, which, will remain unmentioned from here moving forward, because obviously we're on the Webflow train. But he's got some good ideas, because Automatic from the beginning, the company that built some of the WordPress and now that supports the commercial side of WordPress operation, they're fully remote, and they have thousands of employees all across the globe. And so they've got a good perspective on what it takes to build a remote workplace. and he talks about 5 stages of remote work. And we're going to walk through some of those, all of them right now, just to give you a little bit of context as we talk about the different steps. So the first level is kind of no deliberate action taken, but you maybe have some flexibility to, if you're sick or your spouse is sick or something happens, you may be able to do email from your phone. This is, again, not really a remote work setting, but an executive might have the ability to take a few days, from home, or some salesperson might be able to make their sales calls at the hotel, but they're not as productive as they would be because the whole culture of the office is still kind of like built and structured around everyone being in one place. So that's kind of just level 1 is no real effort.
Can you share the pyramid, the visual?
Oh yeah, I should share the.
Can you screen share? This is a great. When I saw this pyramid, I never thought of it like this, but it really makes sense, seeing how these stack on top of each other.
See if I can zoom into this here a little
zoom
bit
in there
so that people can see. Yeah. I don't know how the resolution is going to be, but let's see if y'all can see it there.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
level 1 is this no deliberate action. Level 2 here is kind of recreating the office online. So unnecessary meetings is what they're saying here, interruptions and real-time communications, except for it's now online. So essentially this is everything you were doing in a real office, except for now you're doing it at home. You hear people talking about this a lot, where they don't have the flexibility. They still kind of have to be in front of their desk from 9 to 5 or whatever it may be. It's not any kind of asynchronous. And it's probably not as productive as it could be because people are still feeling tied to specific requirements, adapting to the medium. And so this is, you're getting a little bit into, shared documents and maybe some collaborative tools. Maybe you've got Slack open, maybe you're using Miro, or you're using some of these like digital productivity tools that allow you to interact and collaborate in real time, but you still have a little bit of that tie back to the traditional sense. Maybe you've still got some specific hours that people need to work in front of the desk. You've got some accountability tracking, some metrics, some keystroke tracking, things like that. That's more level 2, but anyway, level 4 goes into asynchronous communication. And so this is where I think Finsweet lives, right? So this is where essentially structured to enable more remote work. And then level 5, real quick, one last look at the chart here, is kind of a nirvana, a culture that works better than any in-person company ever could, which I think is kind of the holy grail. I'm not sure there's very many level 5 operations out there. It'll be interesting to see as this evolves, how people perfect this, remote work environment, how that will become, like what those level 5 companies look like, and how that evolves as we go. So Joe, thoughts on those 5 levels, the new way to work, the whole concept of remote, etc.
I think companies that are on level 1 or level 2 for too long will fail. I do not think that this trend of working from home is going to end. And a lot of industries, if you are lagging behind, there are going to be strong companies that do the remote work right. They save a lot of money. They put that money back into their employees, and those companies are going to win. Mm-hmm. I cannot imagine Finsweet being an in-person company. I can't imagine just picking from a talent pool of people that are in my geographic region.
Right.
I don't think Finsweet would be successful. We pick the best people regardless of location. And with that kind of mentality, you can grow a more powerful team. So companies really have to start paying attention to this. If you are available for remote work, if your industry allows you to remote work, this is not an option anymore. This is something that you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a good points. It's like the talent lottery, right? And there's reasons why people aggregate, right? Why San Francisco and Silicon Valley became, what it is for that, why LA is what it is for movies. And, at a certain level, people start aggregating of like mind, and you start getting, some things that happen by being connected. But again, that was in the past. That was how things became what they became. And a lot of, that what, okay, so a lot of people in business know that what got you here is not necessarily what's going to get you there, right? And so what got businesses and what kind of got us to where we are as a corporate structure, as a large corporate structure, as a whole, is not necessarily going to get us to that next level, right? So this is the stuff that's taking place. The companies that get this evolution that's empowering their employees, et cetera, those are the ones that are going to succeed, that are going to make it through this next transition, because we are going to see a reorganization of how work works in the context that employees are going to start demanding this level of flexibility, right? They're going to see this, they're going to want to travel, they're going to want to have some of this flexibility. And again, not everyone and not all the time and not every industry, but in the places where it is capable, it's going to be the new norm. And so let's see into the next. Let's go into hiring for remote. So let's talk about, Joe, specifically, I'd like to hear from you about how you approach this. I know we've talked about hiring for growth and for hiring for Webflow folks, but how do you look at, and like you said, the new you were talking about the brand designer before, how you guys communicate asynchronously through Loom and not a lot face to face. How do you think about that? How did you even start doing that? How do you make sure you're getting the right people? What are your thoughts there?
I try to not focus on location at all. That's such a big thing that companies do. They focus so much on location. You have to be in my geographic area or a country that I'm familiar with. And it's just not a good way to hire talent. So we are hiring based on the best skill, based on the best attitude. That's a big change. It's a big change going from who's available in my area, who is available in a country that I'm comfortable with, versus who is the absolute best person that we can work with right now. It's a big change, big change.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at. We're getting the best people at the best value. So that for me is dramatically different than how traditional businesses look at hiring.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also, when you start thinking about hiring and thinking about only pulling from that local pool, it's just such a small idea, especially as we get into this, the technical complexity and the kind of the mindset you have to have for some of this work, right? Not everybody gets that. And the idea that you're going to find a strong enough concentration of people who can do those things in your market, I think that limits some of these agencies, right? Like I see some of the local agencies in my market and I see the work they deliver and the clients they work with and the stuff they're doing. And I get this feel that they're not on the cutting edge, right? They're not pushing the limits like some of these companies that are moving faster or who do adopt some of these new things. And so I don't know, because I haven't done a lot of hiring as it relates to doing remote, like building a remote workplace. But I, seeing it from a person who's now worked outside of it and worked inside of it, I could see where as hiring managers, like you're going to have to figure out how to build some of these perks into your business, some of these flexibilities. Because knowledge workers they're not going to accept it in any other way, So any other thoughts on hiring here before we move on to the next step?
Let's go to the next step.
Yeah. Let's look at this. This is interesting. Mike is saying here real quick.
Managing a global team.
When I was a teacher, there was almost a classist view of online courses being less than in-person courses. I see that with certain small businesses now. That's interesting. So almost saying we're better than you because we're in person or because we have an office, or maybe the team is not as capable because they're fully remote or something. And I could kind of see the argument for an online learning environment, but I don't know. What were you going to say there, Joe? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think that the in-person learning is seen as more powerful because people focus more when they're in person if they don't like the information, right? Think about you being in college or high school. If you're there in person, you're forced to take in the content. You're forced to learn what you're doing. You're forced to go to the meeting. You're forced to do this. And remote, online, there is an idea that you're not actually going to be engaged with the online learning. And that's a key difference in enjoyment of work versus not enjoying work. If you are not motivated to learn something, you're not going to learn it, whether it's in person or online. If you're not motivated to do your job, you're not going to do it, whether it's in person or online. So I think that's where a lot of people get this from, that people are slacking off at home, but maybe that's just a sign that they're not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
They're not engaging with what they're actually interested in.
Well, and I think this goes back to the difference in the time and the type of business, right? Because in certain instances, and the technology didn't really allow for online courses, like the early online courses that were recorded kind of crappy, and they didn't have maybe robust add-on material, and you weren't learning about something that required you to be in front of a computer, right? Maybe you're learning something out of a textbook, and the teacher being in front of you or the instructor being in front of you was a valuable resource to interact with this material that was a little abstracted. But again, we're knowledge workers. We're working in design. We're working in Webflow. We're working inside of these tools. And so what would in-person learning benefit me? Actually, it's probably better to learn behind a screen where now I can be in it. I can pause, I can play, I can tinker, and then I can go back and watch it again, right? I don't have to learn at speed. And so this becomes an asynchronous learning environment, which for the knowledge worker, for this type of business, becomes way more beneficial than in-person learning ever could be. And I think we're seeing that in the workplace, right? It's the same thing. Like Finsweet could not exist if we had to be in a geographic region at the beginning of this, right? At some point, who knows how things play out or whatever, but like this company just couldn't exist. We have a team of 30-something people all across the world who are really talented at the specific things that they do. And it's been so unique for me to just be able to interact with all that different variety of talent, to interact with those cultures. And it changes the dynamic of a business. And again, let's go right into managing the global team. This is the perfect transition actually into this, because you do have to manage the culture, and there's things that you miss out on from not being in person. And, and so Joe, talk a little bit about, what your effort or strategy has been around managing the team, or, kind of maintaining some of that. And we'll get into culture and accountability here at the, after the next step, but just talk a little bit about managing the team and building a global team.
Sure. There isn't much management of the team. We try to do the minimal amount of management as possible. And I think that's a big part of remote work, that when we were in the office, we were watching over someone's shoulder. We were having performance reviews, and we were having all of these meetings that were reviewing your work and making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. We don't do that. When we're hiring people, we're looking for people with passion. That's the number one thing to come and join our team. You have to love what you're doing. You have to be incredibly motivated to be part of our team. And that is how you manage a global team. You make sure that your team is passionate about what they're doing. It kind of sounds cliche, but companies are not doing this. Companies are putting out their job offer. They're putting the list of requirements, they're putting their salary, and they go through this BS HR flow. I don't think that works. I think you need to get the most excited people, the people that you could not talk to them for weeks and they're going to be doing their work. It's not easy to find these people all the time, but they're out there. Yeah. And that's how I look at our team. Our team is a bunch of people that are doing their own work. They're passionate, they're entrepreneurs, and they don't need management.
Yeah, and it requires a different level of leader, right? Like you have to be able to trust the people that you bring in. And this is where you go into if you're going to be remote, you start moving away from just a time-based metric of measuring your employees' productivity to a results-only metric, right? And so there was a thing long before people were talking about remote work. There was a thing called a remote, results only work environment. A ROE is what they were calling it. And there was like a book about this, and it was some of the early stuff as it related to remote work. And the idea was that I just want to give you a task, right? And so think about this freelancer economy that's brewing everywhere, where essentially lots of people are freelancers, and that's how they work. They get a task, they get a project, they accomplish the job, and they move on, right? And they keep a steady flow of that business. The problem is that as a freelancer, it becomes difficult to build momentum, and it becomes difficult to specialize because you have to be focused on every aspect of the business. You have to be bringing in new business. You have to be doing, every step of the operation yourself. And so this is what a business gives you. This is what a structure, right, gives you, where now you can have somebody focused on sales, and you can have somebody focused on marketing, and another person focused on operations, and another team of people focused on delivering the work. And so the results only work environment essentially takes this freelancer entrepreneurial mindset, puts it inside of a shell, and then gives it a little bit of structure and organization and puts a little resources around it so that essentially you're doing this freelance slash independent entrepreneurial type work, but you're doing it as part of a team pulling in the same direction. And I think going back to hiring, like it comes down to kind of screening and making sure that when you bring the people in, that they have that mindset. If you need to micromanage people, or if you're working with people that need to be micromanaged, you're gonna have a hard time doing anything productive remote. You know, you need people that are self-starters and that are great communicators. One of the things, and this would be a great transition into asynchronous work, because one of the biggest things in creating a remote work environment is that asynchronous communication, right? It's this idea that I have to now, if I'm not going to be in a meeting with somebody and be able to explain the nuance of this context of what I'm trying to say, I have to document this better, right? I have to do a better job of outlining my expectations and also kind of biting off work into chunks that are manageable by other people, because this allows me to delegate more easily and kind of distribute tasks more easily. And so this lies at the root of asynchronous work and finding interesting ways to do asynchronous work. Joe, you were telling me a little bit about a new brand designer we're working with, and maybe you want to share with the crowd a little bit about what you were saying about how you all communicate back and forth. And it's not via meetings, it's via Loom. You know, you guys just send messages back and forth once a day via Loom. So talk a little bit about that process on your end as it relates to asynchronous work and what it takes as a manager to kind of be okay with that, right? To know that I'm not going to send somebody a message and expect them to reply immediately.
Yeah. At Finsweet, we try to not have any deadlines. The only deadlines we have are the ones that our clients impose on us. We do not have deadlines for doing internal things or communication. I think that's very silly. We use tools like Loom, tools like Slack, and that message is in Slack. That Loom is ready to be responded to when that person is ready. It could be in 5 minutes. It could be in 2 days. It could be in 2 weeks. If there's some urgency, you can tell the person, but we don't have to be doing the same thing at the same time. We have a new brand designer. He's from France. He's totally rocking out. And in the 2 weeks that he's been building this whole new brand for us, we've only met face-to-face once for 1 hour. We had a kickoff meeting, and then we had a meeting last week, and that's it. Every few days, we're sending a 15-minute Loom, a 20-minute Loom. I wake up, I see the Loom, I respond to it, and he sees it the next day. Or he's working late that night and he responds right away. That's okay. We're getting so much work done. And I think if we were face-to-face doing this, there'd be half the work. There would be changes and this and that. And what do you think about this? And trying to brainstorm this. But the reality is, I trust this person. I trust that this person's going to rock out and that I don't need to tell him everything to do. That they can go and operate on their own and communicate when they feel necessary. And when I feel necessary.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There we go from Rohan,
here, right? Yep.
Yeah. You need trust, honesty, and transparency. These are key aspects to remote work. Remember, people are working from home, right? You're working inside your house. Nobody wants to be told what to do inside their house. It makes you feel like a child, right? Imagine being a little child in a home and being told, do this, do this, do this. That's how people can feel with a traditional work environment in their house. You need to feel like you're in control, and you need to actually be in control, not just feel it. You need to actually be in control as a remote employee.
Yeah. And, again, it takes a specific way of doing and thinking. And, maybe we should take a second and talk about when it's not ideal, because we still do some face-to-face stuff, right? And so maybe we need to inject a title, a bullet point here to talk a little bit about what are the moments we do connect, right? At Finsweet, we have an all hands meeting once a month. We do team meetings, not team meetings, but like small team meetings, right? So like if you and I need to work on something, we jump on a call real quick to talk about it, or, we'll have a little kickoff call or something. And so let's take a little bit to talk about that. Like, when is remote not, the core, when do we need to step out of that and make sure that we are working synchronously and in person? And, let's look at that just for a second.
Yeah, we have a monthly, once a month, all team meeting. Reimar set this up the first month that he got here. We were not doing it prior to 7 months ago. And it's been great. It gives us an opportunity, 1 hour, once per month, to see everybody's face, to laugh, to joke. We go through a list of company updates, and it's a very casual, fun, everybody talks event. We tell people what we're thankful for. We go and we call it kudos, and you can give kudos to whoever you've been working with recently that you want to say thanks to. So it's super chill, super relaxed. We're not focusing on work. We're not giving deliverables. It is casual. And like Reimar said, sometimes we break into teams. There are instances where you're typing and you say, I just want to talk about this. Let's get on for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour. But if your whole day is filled with the 30 minutes or an hour and you're just having meetings all day, you're not going to get any work done. Even me, as a founder of a 45-person company, I only have 1, 2, or 3 meetings per day. And those are 30 or 60 minutes. The more meetings I have, the less work I get done. The communication doesn't have to be face-to-face. It can be in a message or in a Loom. So it makes me very efficient.
Yeah, getting some real good feedback here from Johnny. So I want to just acknowledge his comments here. All these paradigms are being challenged: remoteness, 5-day work weeks, 9-to-5 job shift, etc. And then he followed up by saying, honestly, the way I see it is maybe getting distracted for that time, or is what you need to be as efficient as possible. Maybe taking a walk in the middle of the day is what makes you efficient. And everybody has their own ways of working, their own motivational rituals. And this goes back to, again, like, it's just you're building for this culture to empower employees to do their best work. Because, you know, like, imagine, I was talking again, Joe, my girlfriend just got a job and it's in a remote work environment, but I think it's a stage 2 remote work environment where essentially they've just recreated the office environment in a you know, a remote setting. And so she still has to kind of be in front of the computer for a certain amount of time. And the other day we were making lunch and she heard the notification run off and she runs over to the computer. And it's like, this is not an ideal way. It's like, you should be able to step away for a couple minutes to do a thing. Same thing, like if you're in deep work, right? If I'm deep in a Webflow interaction or something like that, and it's a 50-stage thing and I have 20 elements and I'm moving, like, I don't want a distraction. Like, I know exactly where those things are in the flow, and I don't want anything to break that thought process, especially not some meeting invite or some person asking me where my TPS report is or whatever the fuck, you know, middle management does in a lot of these companies. And so, yeah, good points, Johnny, for sure, 100%. Yeah.
And that Johnny, I love how you said everybody's different. That's such a key thing. You know, some people may want to go up and take the walk. Some people may want to go up and have a beer. Some people may want to go exercise. Some people may want to, who the hell knows, take a 10-hour break, go sleep, and then work in the middle of the night. We have plenty of people that do that. We have people that, even though they are awake during our normal hours, they choose to work from 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. Sounds ridiculous to me, but that's where that person is most effective. So giving everybody the opportunity to put forward their best work in the best way that they can do it, that's the key. And when you have a whole team of people doing that, the efficiency and the quality is going to go up, up, up.
Yeah. And it, again, like Johnny said, it allows you to be more productive. I'm not a morning person. I just don't do the mornings well, right? And so for me, if a job told me I have to be there at a certain time, I'm just not gonna be that productive between, you know, like 7 or 8 in the morning. Like 9, like I come alive around 8:30, right? And now my brain starts working and I can move. And so Walker here, Reed is talking about, it's definitely empowering as an employee to be told, we trust you. Takes time adjusting to just, you know, not being micromanaged or not being told you have to do every step of the way. And that's it. Again, that's all this is about, is you're focused on the work, you're focused on the results, you're focused on delivering the end objective. The rest of it doesn't matter, right? Like a lot of times, especially in school growing up, you know, you're like, show your work, show your work, show your work. Nobody gives a fuck, right? As long as you're not stealing the work. It's the result that matters. That's the fun part about this world that we're in, where it's a digital medium, right? You're building software. Does the website work? Cool. Is it beautiful? Great. Is it accessible? All right. Can I get to it on my phone? Oh, we're in. Nothing else matters. I don't care if you slept for
Yeah.
30 days or 25 days and the last day you did the thing, or it doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So yeah. Which, again, let's go into a little bit of the culture and accountability, because it does take a special effort to start building culture around that, because you're not spending time together. And so one of the things we do is the team meetings, and at the last all hands meeting, the team brought up, hey, we'd like to do some stuff interpersonal. We'd like to get a little bit more time hanging out and getting to know each other. And so, like, you have to create some of that. And so we're looking at how do you create more time to just hang out and not be working, right? How would you do something like maybe an office happy hour, but virtually? And you have to build some of these things in, and you also still have to have a little bit of accountability. So Joe, talk a little bit about how you see that. How do you, in this grand scheme of things, keep people accountable? I know you said you don't like to have deadlines, but at the end of the day, the work has to get done. Clients, need their projects in a specific time frame. And so, like, how do you do that? How do you maintain the culture while holding people accountable?
People are held accountable because most of the time people are deciding what they should do. And that's something that in traditional business, we do not see. Traditional business, we see managers telling people what to do. At Finsweet, we are trying to empower our team to choose what they think is best for the company. Some people are working on client sites, and they get to say, hey, I want to work on these types of sites or these types of sites. Just before this call, we have one of our new content video producers. He's going to be recording videos for us. He just finished a series and said, what do I do next? And I said, I don't know. I have no idea. Figure it out. Come up with a plan, write what you're going to do, come up with your timeline. And if you nail it, you get a big thumbs up. If you don't nail it, you just messed up your own plan. So whose fault is that? Right? There's no confusion whose fault it is if they're coming up with the plan themselves. So you create this environment where you have people as growing entrepreneurs and deciding what's best for them to do based on how the companies can succeed.
Yeah.
It's a very different way of thinking, but we've been doing this for years and it totally works.
Yeah. And when you empower someone to take ownership over a project, they take pride in that and they want to kind of over deliver, just like you would with a client. So again, it's the same mindset that comes down from top to bottom that we've talked about in the other episodes in this show, right? We're looking for people who are specifically looking to over deliver, to every time figure out how they can outshine what they did the time before. And not because, some ego's driving them or because, but just because some desire to just do their best quality work, right? Like, I always want to do the best that I can, right? This represents me. And now I have all these other people at Finsweet that feel the same way. And we all understand that, hey, we're trying to build the Finsweet brand into a specific thing. And that means all of us holding that standard. And so we all take part of holding that accountability. And because we're empowered to work this way, it works. It's hard. It's hard to only do parts of these things, right? You can't just let people free and let them do whatever they want without having some of that culture or some of those expectations in place, or without having the right people from the beginning. And so, Babas, the model sounds awesome. It does, but it's hard to pull off. It is a hard thing to pull off.
And I think it's going to be hard for companies to convert to this. If you started in a traditional office, you have these traditional mindsets. If you now say, hey, you actually don't really have this manager anymore, you get to choose what you want to do. Some people are not mentally prepared for this. There are some workers that need someone to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with this, but maybe these people are better fit for a traditional environment.
Yeah.
And all the things that we're talking about with the accountability and pushing yourself and putting out your best work, this is our culture at Finsweet. If I had to explain our culture, it is growth, success, being the best that you can be, and doing amazing work. And really, it's a rare culture. It is. Because a lot of people come to you with culture and say, we're, I don't know, friendly, or we like to do these types of things. I don't care about what we want. I care about what you want. What are you doing? How are you the happiest? And if each person is focusing on their best, that creates a culture for everybody. And it doesn't have, people don't have to share culture with things they don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
You do your best, you're part of our culture.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
Different.
Johnny brings another little point here. Even now, while working remote, having the camera off should be normalized. Having kids behind in the background should be normalized.
Sure.
What was the last thing? Not having meetings on X day, etc. We're all human beings. So yeah, just understanding that, you know, this goes back to the quality of life, and the reason why all of this is powerful is because, you know, you can take time off in the middle of the day to take the kid to an event, or to go on the field trip, or, you know, go to the gym, or go golfing, or whatever the heck you want to do with your time, you know? And so, yeah, be productive on your schedule. We've been in, and this was new for me, right? Like some of the thinking international, right? Like there's been so many times that Joe and I have been talking and planning out something, and I'll say something and he'll say, no, we got to think about a different way, because that won't resonate with the international audience. And it's just a new way of thinking for me. And it's true, right? Like the other day we're in all hands and one of our designers made a joke that just didn't land with anybody. It was 100% crickets the whole time. And it was so funny. And once he explained the joke, it still wasn't that funny, but we understood the language barrier that, like, so you have to start thinking about things in just a different way, a more inclusive way, a way that doesn't necessarily default to English first or anything specifically first, you know? And so obviously there's hurdles to communication. There's, and maybe this is a good transition into the productivity tools, because there are barriers to doing some of this, and there are some difficulties, right? There's times where I'm talking with somebody on the team and maybe I have a hard time understanding, or we're not able to communicate as effectively sometimes via text or talking. And so this is, again, where text comes into play, or where being able to replay the video comes into play. And so like, first of all, let's talk a little bit about that, Joe. The transition to the global team and the difference in mindset around that. And then let's talk a little bit about the productivity tools and some of the things that people can do, because we did a whole episode on the productivity tools. So we're not going to get too deep into that. I'd rather more on just the mindset, on the culture shift of international and global and remote. Sure.
Productivity tools. A lot of people think, okay, now we have Zoom, so now we can all be remote and just be video. But that doesn't have to happen. You don't have to be video. There are people that are very uncomfortable in video, or very uncomfortable face-to-face. That's okay. There are people that were working for Finsweet for 2, even 3 years, and I never saw their face. No thumbnail, no video chat. And every time I asked, they said, I'd prefer not to chat and just text. So the productivity tools, it's not just Zoom. Don't default to, we have video, so now everyone's going to video. Some people don't want to do that. And some people are excellent text communicators. We have a bunch of these on the team. And once you go international, this is more extreme. English as a second language, putting that person in a video, they may not be doing their best work communicating verbally. So the productivity tools, we use video and we use Slack. If you don't want to be on video, you can mute yourself. You can communicate in text. Giving people the option is really powerful. And yeah, that's a great way to start the tools. That don't default to tools that just because other people are using them. Default to the tools that make your team operate in the best way.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to go back, we did a whole episode. I don't remember which number episode it was. Maybe Rohan can share that in the comments, about productivity tools. And so I didn't want to dive too much into the specifics of any particular tool, other than, you know, one of the things I wanted to point out, you know, in the world of Finsweet is that, you know, we're kind of tool agnostic. Again, going back to empowering the person who wants to do the work, whatever, you know, we do have a couple core tools, right? So we manage products in ClickUp. We manage communications in Slack, our project management in ClickUp, communications in Slack, Loom for, you know, like, so those asynchronous videos, and but other than that, you know, like there's there's very little that is kind of focused on, and obviously Webflow, but there's very little that's focused on any particular tool. There's so many tools out there right now. Like we're using Miro now. We're excited about Miro, about the ability to collaborate and interact in real time, where everyone can kind of be in this little virtual whiteboard space, and everyone can kind of be contributing. And again, it creates a different way to contribute, right? Let's go back to some sales meeting or some big meeting where you're at a corporate HQ and you're in some conference room and everybody's sitting around the table and the CEO says, who's got an idea? Well, if you're extroverted and loud, maybe you've got an idea that you want to share with the group. And so you always get your point across, but maybe somebody in the corner or somebody sitting on the side is not as extroverted and not as vocal, and they don't get as a level of playing field to share thoughts or express ideas. And that means as a business, you're missing out potentially on any of those other thoughts because somebody's not vocal or extroverted, or because they don't want to be in the spotlight in a group of 20 people like that. And so this is where, again, creating some of these asynchronous communication flows, some of these communication workflows using tools like Miro. I'm just a cursor on a screen. I'm just a note that I left on the screen. I'm a DM somewhere, and so again, you can start empowering people to communicate in ways that are more comfortable for them, to enable their talent to rise to the surface in a way that showcases their talent the way they have nurtured it, right? Not the way you expect that to be expressed or the way that you want to receive that as an individual. And those are some of the mindsets I think that need to take place inside of the businesses in order to make remote work. Any thoughts about that?
I love that. Yeah, I just love that analogy, because I could totally see that. We post something in Slack and comments come in on the thread all different times. Somebody may respond right away. Somebody may respond in a day or 2 days. They want to think about it. And they all hold the same weight. There's no, hey, I answered during the live meeting versus I sent an email later. Everybody gets the same say. And it doesn't matter how you want to communicate. You get to do it the way you want. You could go post a Loom video in there. So yeah, I love that analogy. It's so accurate.
Well, and this just goes back to being clear about expectations, right? And having things make sense. So if I need feedback by Tuesday or by Wednesday, I put that in my initial message, and I make sure I provide enough room for people to have a day or two to reply so that we can do that, right? So it's different. And it's different in the culture. And again, there are certain times where I need an immediate response from somebody because we're under a deadline and life happens and not everything is perfect, right? So let's not get it twisted and pretend that everything's always perfect and that everything is always just, flowing, copacetic and whatever, right? Like things get crazy, timelines change, projects change. You got to be able to adapt. And so there's still got to be some room for that. But in general, the idea, is to create an environment where this can take place. And that's what you aspire to, right? So nobody's ever going to get it perfect. The tools are better than they've ever been to try to create this type of stuff. And so let's go ahead and dive into the comments. Any thoughts, questions, concerns? We've seen a couple coming in here. Let's see. Maggie was saying something. So my new remote job is pushing me to pick up a new language. Okay. So yeah, that's cool.
Whoa.
She's saying
Nice.
It's pretty cool. It cuts out the emoji for some reason, cut off the rest of the text in the app here. But yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Joe.
that's a really interesting one. We have several people on the team that came to Finsweet with okay English. They didn't want to get on a video call. They were very uncomfortable, a lot of spelling mistakes. And after a year, they're pros. I mean, you would think that English is their first language. So I think this is a really interesting trend we're going to see, people being more comfortable speaking other languages, because naturally your team is going to be speaking other languages.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And as more languages, like think about, we all speak Webflow, right? And now we're all internally learning this client first naming system that we're kind of trying to standardize throughout the organization. We've shared it with you all a couple times. So we're now, we're deep into this internally. And so this becomes a language we speak now, right? So that when we all get into this Webflow project, we're all speaking the same kind of language as it relates to the work that we're doing. And so it will be interesting as you talk about programming languages and visual development and no code and blah, blah, blah. Like we are all learning to speak a language, right? Design is a language, right? I can speak design and lay out a project. If you're watching our critique shows at all on Thursdays, we're doing these shows where we dive into the design of these different Webflow sites. And, you know, we're looking at these languages that a lot of times you don't need the words, right? The words do help if you can understand. But a lot of times the well-designed sites, the most beautiful of these sites, convey the message without the language, right? Without words. And this is interesting. Like, we're developing these new ways of communicating in all sorts of ways. And so, yeah, that's an interesting point, Maggie, to see how that all evolves. And for anybody who's interested, it was episode 14, Norm, and I think that was Rohan there that posted that about tools to grow your business. So let's see. Mike's got a question here.
We have a question from Mike.
Yeah.
In your experience, are full-time remote employees less likely to expect benefits, insurance and such, or is it the same as in person? Okay. Well, are full-time remote employees less likely to expect benefits? Yeah, I think so. I think this is a topic that I need to learn more about as we're growing. This is more and more of a question that I'm asking myself. For right now, being a freelancer really gives you the power to do whatever you want. And because of that, I think that even people that are full-time with companies may be doing other things on the side, and they may be able to recoup the type of money to go and do their own type of insurance. And we're seeing that with the people on Finsweet, that we're not giving insurance, but we have plenty of people on the team that are doing that themselves. This is a big shift. And yeah, I think that this will shift to as we become more remote.
Yeah, it depends, I think, on the operation too. You know, like
Totally.
some companies for sure, like, are going to offer full benefits, and some are going to offer a different arrangement of benefits, and some will offer no benefits, you know? And so I think there's different tiers. Right. That comes down to the type of business. I don't know that that's like a universal decision. It does seem that in the gig economy, companies are getting away from providing some of those benefits and perks, but maybe that's being made up for in compensation. And the other thing is, like, you know, let's say you're a US based company. How are you going to provide health insurance in an emerging market, right? They maybe don't have access to the same thing. And so you have to think about different ways. Maybe you just increase the compensation there for them to be able to buy their own insurance in that market, or to, you know, some other way. And so I do think the remote work will lead to interesting compensation structures where it's going to be non-traditional in the context that, like, you know, you just have expectations. When you get a job, you're going to get X, Y, and Z. And I think that with the remote work and some of these digital workplaces expanding, you're going to see a little bit of that evolve and change as to what's expected as a base comp plan or whatever. So let's see. Who else? Daniel. Want to read that one there? Let's see. Converted to Office 365 OneDrive. Doesn't work well at all. How can I get them even remotely interested in Slack? Yeah, we talk about this in the products episode, that it's hard to force products on people. You know, it's if they want to work a certain way and you want to work a different way, that could be tough. But it's hard to get clients to, like, it's hard to just cram some software down a client's throat, especially if they have Office 365, which is like a whole ecosystem that they're probably tied into, and they probably paid a lot of money to set that up. And so, you know, I don't know, there could be a lot of things causing issues there, but I don't know. Any thoughts on how to get them excited about Slack or something?
Yeah, Daniel, what I would recommend doing is showing them that it works. You have to have some type of use case or some type of past process that you can go to them and say, hey, I'm using Slack and it's working for these reasons. And that's going to get people more interested. When people come to us for work, usually they say, how can we communicate outside of email? And I say, we use Slack because we get to do this, this, and this, and we can answer the fastest way possible in Slack. And usually that gets people right on board, even if they're not Slack users.
Yeah.
So get that use case and present it.
Yeah. Okay. Ranjan is asking, how do you manage money when you start hiring internationally?
the same way that it would be done nationally. I don't know if there's a change between national and international here. Managing money when you are starting your business is very important. I would need to know a little bit more about what you're asking for. If you can re-ask this question, I'd love to answer it for you.
Yeah, and we've talked a little bit about some of how we split projects or how kind of some of that evolved in the earlier days of Finsweet, and how some of that stuff's transitioning internally. And so I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly which episode that was that we talked about that. Maybe about I don't know. I'm not sure if anybody remembers that we can share with Ranjan. That'd be helpful. Let's see. Tim McGee is asking a couple good questions here. I hope to transfer into web development soon. I feel trapped in my current job with good enough pay. How does someone get into the business at a reasonable starting compensation? Is what the rest of that is cut off. It's a hard question.
It's a good question. I think when you're making a big career change, you cannot expect to make that clean transition into the same pay. You just can't. If you're starting this from new, you have to approach it as I'm starting this new. In the first year of business, Finsweet made a terribly low amount of money. Year 2, pretty damn low. Year 3, we started to see some money coming in. So it's a process. I think if you're really serious about jumping into this, you have to be prepared for a little bit of compensation loss for the first few years. Could be 1 year, could be 2 years. Depends how good you get, how fast.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is something where if you're making a full transition, you probably want to start on the side. You want to start building your skills, because all it takes is one website and you can replace a month's worth of salary, right? And so you just need to start. And so in that context, I would talk about, like the things that we've talked about before, where you just have to go create work. You have to show that you're capable of landing that caliber of work. And then you just got to find a client or two, right? Because you find 1 or 2 good clients, you can bye-bye regular job, And so, and again, I probably wouldn't quit even if I did land a client or 2, because I might just keep that on the side until I landed 3 or 4. And until that steadily was coming in and I replaced my gig, that's how I would do it. I didn't do that in my life because the world kind of chewed me up and spit me out. And it was tough learning on the fly and being dependent on that income as I grew, and having to learn web design on the fly and also try to sell it. I found myself in situations where I was kind of out of water, out of my depth, trying to build something, and you get yourself in weird situations. And so, find ways to learn the skills, make the transition slowly while you still have some income. And then as you ramp that up, because it's hard without the skill set, without a proven track record, there's too much talent in this space to just hire unknown at a top tier rate. It's all about what you can do.
And the beautiful part about this, Tim, is this job on the side is possible with the remote work environment. If everything was still in person, there's no way in hell that you're going to a 9 to 5 and then you are physically going to another place at night to go and learn this. That is really difficult. So with remote, you're able to finish your 9 to 5 and then sit in front of your computer for 2 hours a night. And after 6 months, you'll start to understand if this is the path that you want to continue with.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. Robert has agreed with that point. We're just becoming profitable in year 2, side job to start. Yeah. Yep. And even if you do land, let's say you land, I've seen this a number of times, right? I had a buddy who landed, it was like a $30,000 deal. He thought he was made because he had a bunch of money in the bank, and he quit his job and he moved into a different state, and he got, instead of just a regular apartment, he got like a nice apartment because he was flush, and he was like, I'm definitely going to land another one of these deals. I've got 6 months of runway or whatever he thought he had. 2 months later, he calls me, yo, man, you got any leads you can send me? Or you got any work, any projects? He had burned through the cash and he had nothing else lined up. And now he was out there floating in the wind. And he had this new Mercedes that he had bought, and he had this apartment that he couldn't afford anymore. And so don't do that to yourself. Don't put yourself in that position. he did figure it out, right? He's landing more clients, and sometimes people need that fuse burning, right? And I remember like when I was doing some of this, we would talk about like how many months I had left. You hear startups talk about ramp, how much ramp they have or what their burn is, burn rate. And so we would talk about that. Like, I landed a new job. Okay, I got 2 more months, now I got 4 months left in the tank. I got 6 months left in the tank. And that's kind of how I would look at that. And so sometimes you need a little bit of that stimulus to go. Sometimes, people are less averse to risk. And so I think it depends on the person. So Jay, save that money, yo. That's right. Yeah.
We have a follow-up question from Ranjan.
Yeah.
Okay. We have Babis. Okay. Yes. So the question about the international money, how do you manage the transfers? Do you have specific salary structures when you think of hiring? Nice question. So the transfer, everything is done with Swift. We're wire transferring from bank to bank. We were trying some other softwares and some other tools, but we have since gotten rid of that. And now we try to do everything bank to bank direct. I think we pay $15 or so per transfer, which is great. And yeah, that's how we go and do that.
Yeah.
Now, specific salary structures. This is an interesting one. We are using the power of different earning potentials in different countries, and it's working for everybody. Usually when somebody comes to join the team, we ask them, what do you need to make to be happy here? What do you want to be paid so that you can work full-time, do all of your work, and be thrilled working at Finsweet? When they come back with the number, we will identify it and say, is this person's value equal to this amount that they're asking? If it is a yes, they'll probably join the team. If it's a no, we tell them no. And that really leads to the best people at the best value coming to join your team. That we respect, you need this much money to live, and we can either pay you that or we cannot pay you that. It really depends on how talented you are. So now we have people from all different countries competing and coming up with different values for the quality of their work. I think it's competitive, it's great, and that's how your company is going to lead to higher talent. People fighting for this position.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to normalize, like every company does this, right? Like Webflow doesn't pay San Francisco rates for somebody who's living in, the middle of Iowa, right? They're going to normalize those salaries a little bit because the cost of living is different. And so it's hard to talk about like specific salary structures because that's so personal to each company. As it relates to the type of hiring and the roles that they're working on. Typically you work off of some, metric for what is happening in that position, but a lot of the positions that are being created are not standardized, right? So there's no standards to a lot of what we're doing. And so it's difficult to normalize any of that. So let's see, Tim is asking another question. Oh, go ahead.
One more thing with the Ranjan, last point on this is some people work fixed salary. Some people are paid by project. And this is a great way to start adding people to your team. We've talked about this in past episodes, that we're only just starting to talk about fixed salaries at Finsweet. For the first 4 years of business, we could not afford any fixed salary. If you came on the team, you had to be bringing in money to make money. So also think of it like that. You can pay by project, pay by actual revenue coming in to the company.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. This is going to be, I think, the last question here. We're already at 104. So this will be the last question we'll jump into. And actually, we'll take a quick second to just talk about what we're going to do here. And if y'all want to give feedback on that, we'd love to have it here after the show. So where's the best place to market? Is Fiverr too saturated? Tim McGee's asking with low-cost developers. I did logos and graphics for a while, but could not compete with great logos for $5. I think Fiverr is a race to the bottom. We've cherry-picked talent off of Fiverr because there are talented people that are on there, and you can sometimes find talented people and pull them off. But I've never been a big fan of the Fiverr model, or even as like when I was doing freelance work, the WeWorks, not the WeWork. What's the other one? I don't know. There's all these like job, board sites. I can't think of the name of the one that I was thinking of right now. I just created an account there. We were looking for
Upwork.
Yeah, Upwork. That's the one.
Yeah, I don't like those either. Fiverr, Upwork.
You get so many responses. They're all over the place. You never know the quality of work. It's so hard. And as a developer or a designer or a person on one of those platforms, you're 100% just a commodity there. You know, like people are not really appreciating your value. I would find another way to try to stand out. We've talked a lot about how to sell yourself. Next week, we'll talk about how to build your portfolio. So I don't know, Joe, any thoughts there?
Yeah, Tim, I would definitely recommend a more natural and organic path. Create a great portfolio, really push yourself to be really high quality. And once you get to that point, people will start to find you in this community.
Yeah.
So yeah, skip that.
And there are people making lots of money on those platforms, right? If you get listed as an Upwork Pro and you get a good rating on those sites, like I don't want to diminish anybody who's making income there. There are talented people that are making a living off of these platforms. I've never found the real value in trying to do that, mostly because if I'm going to go out as a freelancer and build a business and generate leads, I don't want that spigot of leads to be attached to somebody that they can turn off, right? So this is why building your own website and having your own digital reach and building your own audience is important. And as a freelancer, you want to kind of control the flow of those leads. You don't want somebody to just say like, oh, you can't have any leads anymore, you know, and now you're done. Like, what do you do, right? And now your portfolio is tied to that platform. All your work's tied to that platform. I don't know. It just, it seems like if you really want to expand and grow, it's, I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Okay, so that's the last question. If you've all have looked at the F and Growth site and have voted on topics, let's just take a quick peek. You'll see something coming up in the next shows that has been creeping up over the last couple weeks here. And so next week, like we've discussed, we're going to talk about how to build a memorable portfolio that stands out. But the week after that, we're going to talk about what Webflow gets wrong. And Joe and I are already a little nervous about this episode because obviously we love Webflow, the community, and the platform. But this is all audience driven here, and somebody posted this. It's climbed the ranks. And we do have a couple ideas for what we think Webflow could be doing better from a product and community standpoint. And we like your thoughts on that too. And so today we're going to jump into our co-working space for just a minute. And we're going to ask you all what you think Webflow might be able to do better. And we're going to take some of that feedback and wrap it up with what we're thinking. And in a couple weeks, we're going to come back with a special episode to just share some thoughts from internally here at Finsweet. We've been actually talking with people in the community for months about some of this. And so let's talk about it and let's see what you think. We'd love your thoughts. So let's share that link. Let's go. Let's see. Oh, Ron's already done it.
I shared it.
So, oh, Joe did it. Okay, so we're going to jump off the stream.
I'm pumped.
We're going to kill the stream here, and we'll see you in the co-work space to hear your feedback on that. And otherwise, we'll see you next week. Remember, like the video, subscribe, do all the things on YouTube. We appreciate you all for showing up week after week. We'll be back this Thursday with another episode of Critique. And for those of you who will join us, we'll see you in the co-working space in just a minute. Okay, bye. Oh, wait, got to do this thing first. Bye.